Hello friends, I welcome you all in my channel. As a part of the lecture series on ecosystem, today I am going to discuss about food chain. Dear friends, if you are new to this channel, kindly subscribe this channel for more updates and such type of lectures. In ecology, a food chain is a series of organisms that eat one another so that the energy and nutrients flow from one to the next. Now, we can take a look on how energy and nutrients move through an ecological community. In the previous lectures, we have fully discussed that in an ecosystem there are biotic as well as abiotic components, and these biotic and abiotic components remain interacting with each other, and under the biotic components there is a category that is known as producers, which produce their food and then transfer to the other successful trophic levels like consumers of different types, primary, secondary, tertiary, and so on. Let us start by considering just a few who eats who relationships by looking at food chain. Here are two examples of the food chain, pictorial examples. Well, if we take a look on this picture, here this plant, it is a producer which produces its own food by the process of photosynthesis, where it utilizes sunlight and minerals from the soil and available of the water. Then it utilizes a part of its energy in its metabolism, and a major portion of energy is lost as a heat. We have discussed all these things in the previous lectures, and then this energy gets transferred from the different trophic levels. Similarly here, if we define the food chain, there are so many definitions, but I'm here going to give you a practical definition, that is, a food chain is a linear sequence of organisms through which nutrients and energy pass as one organism eats another. In a food chain, each organism occupies a different trophic level, as depicted in these pictures, defined by how many energy transfer separates it from the basic input of the chain. Food chain implies the sequence in which food energy is transferred from producers to other consumers from the primary level to the higher level. At each level of transfer, a large portion, that is 80 to 90% of energy get lost as a heat, and of the potential energy. This energy which we are talking about, 80 to 90% of the potential energy which is lost as a heat, and only 10% is transferred from other levels. Hence, the number of steps or links in a sequence is restricted usually to 4 or 5. The shorter the food chain, or the nearer is the organism to the beginning of the chain, the available energy intake is greater. Well, dear friends, have a look on this picture. In this picture, it is clearly indicated that there is a sun which gives energy to the autotrophers, and from the autotrophers then the energy, and there are the two types of arrows. One is pink and then is yellow. The pink one is a depicted flow of materials, and the blue one is depicted the flow of energy from autotrophers, herbivores, primary carnivores, secondary, tertiary, and finally dead and decay. biotic components of the ecosystem are linked to each other. They are linked through a food chain, or we can say they are linked to each other through a sequence of trophic levels. In a typical food chain, producers are the beginners at the beginning of the food chain, and their role is to provide food to the rest of the community by utilizing solar energy, as depicted here in the picture. These autotrophs are producers. They utilize the solar energy, minerals and water, produce the food, and then transfer to the another levels. Other organisms belongs to the consumers, be it a primary consumer or secondary consumer, tertiary or quaternary consumer, and finally decompose, which are present at the bottom to recycle the organic content. When all these organs which are present on these levels get died, then there's one more group. Those are called decomposers, microorganisms, which convert their organic matter into the simpler inorganic, and the cycling of the material remains it remains on the move. That is why in this picture we have depicted two types of arrows. Here not only the energy is transferred from one level to another, but I have here mentioned about the decomposers, which recycled these minerals from this level to that level, and so on. In this manner, a nutritive interaction relationship exists between the living organisms of an ecosystem. It is always straight line in case of food chain as compared to food web. Food chains are straight and always follow a progressive straight line, as you can depict here. The flow of energy is also unidirectional, from sun to producer and then different series of consumers. Let us look at the parts of a typical food chain, starting from the producers and moving upwards. Here are the pictorial examples. Okay. At the base of the food chain lies primary producers. The primary producers are autotrophs and are most of the photosynthetic organisms such as plants, algae or cyanobacteria. The organisms that eat primary producers are called primary consumers. Primary consumers are usually herbivores, plant eaters, though they may be algae eaters or bacteria eaters. The organisms that eat primary consumers are called secondary consumers. Secondary consumers are generally meat eaters, those are known as carnivores. The organisms that eat secondary consumers are called tertiary. These are the carnivores like eagle or big fish. At this level, these are not only carnivores, but here at some times they are in the food chain. There are omnivores as well, which feed both meat as well as grasses. Some food chains have additional levels such as quaternary consumers, carnivores that eat tertiary consumers. Organisms at the very top of the food chain are called apex consumer. Proceeding ahead, let's have a look on these three types of food chains. In these food chains, it's a three-linked food chain. Here are only three levels. Then another is a four-linked food chain, and similarly this one is a five-linked food chains. In different ecosystems or in a single ecosystem, there are different kinds of ecosystem exist at a time, or there may be 3-linked, it may be 4-linked, or it may be 5-linked food chain. Now let's have a look on these pictures. These are the different food chains in different ecosystems. Say for example, if we take a look on this picture, it is the example of the food chain in forest ecosystem. This is food chain in the grassland ecosystem. This is the food chain in the aquatic ecosystem, and this is the food chain in the desert ecosystem. Dear friends, now proceeding ahead, let's know about the types of food chain. Basically, food chain has two types. One that is called the grazing food chain, and another that is called detritus food chain. First of all, let us know what is a grazing food chain. In the grazing food chain, solar energy is trapped by plants and then biomass, in turn eaten by the herbivores, and these are subsequently being consumed by a variety of carnivores. These are longer food chains at the decomposer level. Food chain in aquatic ecosystem. In a pond, floated or rooted plants and algae are responsible for performing photosynthesis, that is, producers, or we can say autotrophs, to prepare food for the other members of the ecosystem. They represent producers in the food chain as depicted in the figure. Here the producers like phytoplankton, rooted and free-floating plants. These are the producers prepare their food by and then transfer to the primary consumers, where there are the different examples of the organisms like protozoans, water flies, snails, etc. Secondary consumers, hydra, dragonfly larvae, Nepsipilla larvae, water insects, etc. Then terrestrial consumers, large fishes or frogs. Quaternary consumers, snakes or birds. And then there's all these organisms at the different levels get death and decay. Then there's the reducers, or we can say decomposers, bacteria, fungi, which convert them into simple organic food, and then this simple organic material is reused. In this way, as I have depicted in the previous slides under the food chain, both energy as well as minerals are transferred from one trophic level to another trophic level. Example of the grazing food chain in terrestrial ecosystem. A typical land ecosystem food chain starts from a grass and trees are the producers. In the grassland, there may be as I have depicted in this picture, grass, and in grassland, or if we talk about the forest ecosystem, there must be the trees or small plants which act as the producers, and this grass is eaten by rabbit and other herbivores. They represent as the primary consumers. Rabbit is eaten by cat, that is secondary consumer, which in turn eaten by the wolf, that is tertiary consumer. Both cat and wolves will be consumed by the tiger and other big carnivores. Those are known as quaternary consumers. Then finally, there is a death of all these organisms, becomes the food for the bacteria and fungi to produce simple organic matter for reuse by the producers. Now, Let's talk about the detritus food chains. Detritus food chain starts from dead organisms and goes into the microorganisms and then to detritus feeding organisms and their predators as depicted in the picture. Here are some dead leaves which are eaten by the woodlouse, and this woodlouse is eaten by some bird, black bird or any kind of bird, or it may be a bird or it may be any insect, another insect. The term detritus refers to all organic matter involved in the decomposition of dead organisms. This food chain does not depend on the solar energy. Common examples of detritus food chain is marshland, where mangrove leaves fall into the warm shallow water. The detritus eating animals, for example bacteria, fungi and protozoa, act upon the dead matter of the dead leaves to convert them into the simpler organic substance as depicted in this here. Dear friends, thank you for watching this lecture.